And we are still awaiting for the results of an independent autopsy. The results were and are expected to be back today.
This is about two objects. One of them is a phone. It went to Horn Island on the 4th of July, and it came back to the mainland that evening. Nolan Wells did not. That phone has been at the center of this case for 6 weeks, and as of the middle of August, it still had not received the forensic examination that both sides publicly agreed to conduct. The other object is a document. It exists. It is finished. It has been sitting completed since the end of July. It is the official autopsy of Nolan Xavier Wells, and no one outside the investigation is permitted to read a single line of it. Two objects, two things that could, in theory, explain what happened. Two things the public still cannot see. The story of why is stranger than most people following this case realize. To understand what the phone might hold, you have to understand what the phone was doing. According to GPS data compiled by the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, the boat Nolan Wells traveled on arrived at Horn Island at 11:14 in the morning on July 4th. Sheriff John Ledbetter of Jackson County has said the boat left from a private dock in the Ocean Springs area. Nolan was 18 years old, 6 feet 1, about 180 pounds. He'd played football at Ocean Springs High School, and he'd gone on to play wide receiver at Southwest Mississippi Community College. He was 3 days into a summer that would have ended with his 19th birthday. He went to the island with high school friends. Photographs his mother later posted show him on the water in blue swim trunks and sunglasses, smiling into someone's camera. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department has said Nolan was last seen around 3 in the afternoon. Publicly, no confirmed witness has reported seeing him after roughly 4:30. That gap, 3 o'clock to 4:30, and then nothing, is the space this entire case has been fought over. Everything else is an argument about what belongs inside it. And here is the part that matters for what comes later. Horn Island has almost no reliable cell service. When something did go wrong that afternoon, the people trying to call for help had trouble being heard. You will hear that in a moment in their own words, which raises the question that has driven the family's legal team for 6 weeks. On an island where a phone barely works, what was Nolan's phone actually recording? At approximately 4 o'clock in the afternoon on July 4th, a teenager aboard the boat Nolan had traveled to Horn Island on placed a call to CITO, a private marine assistance company based in Biloxi. That recording was released by the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources in late July and obtained by WLOX News. The audio begins with hold music and commotion in the background. Then a dispatcher picks up. The caller tells her they're at the west tip of Horn Island. The bilge pump has stopped working. He tells her they're sinking. The vessel was a 22-foot Triton, a 2022 model. The caller says there are about 7 people aboard. He asks for the boat to be pumped out and towed to Fort Bayou Launch. The dispatcher works through her checklist. Is the boat aground? How deep is the water? Does the boat have a VHF marine radio? No, the caller tells her they do not have a VHF radio. Cell reception is poor throughout. She has to ask him to repeat himself more than once. And then before 4:31, the caller advises that private assistance has been arranged. The CITO request is canceled. Now hold that timeline in your head, because the sequence is what makes it significant. Nolan was last seen around 3. The distress call goes out around 4. Private help is arranged, and CITO is stood down before 4:31. Somewhere inside that window, according to every public account, Nolan Wells was no longer with the group. His friends have told investigators they needed to leave early because the boat was taking on water. They've said Nolan told them he wanted to stay behind and catch a later ride back with other people. That is what they told authorities, and it is what Sheriff Ledbetter relayed publicly in the first week. Speaking to the Associated Press, Ledbetter put it this way: from the people they had spoken to, it sounded like Nolan chose to stay on the island, with the assumption that he was going to ride back to the mainland with someone else. One of the young men present on the island that day was Bart Edmiston Jr., 21, a former Ocean Springs high teammate of Nolan's. His family, through Mississippi attorney Russ Latino, has stated publicly that Edmiston piloted his own boat to Horn Island and piloted his own boat home. He provided aid to the boat that was taking on water. His family has also said they will seek legal recourse against online creators who have falsely accused him of being a suspect, of causing or contributing to Nolan's death, or of participating in a cover-up. Keep that statement in mind. It becomes a recurring feature of this case. Before any of the legal machinery started, there were roughly 40 hours in which Nolan Wells was simply a missing 18-year-old on a federal wilderness island in the dark. His mother reported him missing late on the night of July 4th. By the following morning, the response had scaled up fast. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department set up a command post on the coastline. They coordinated with the United States Coast Guard, with the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, with Gulf Islands National Seashore, and with the United Cajun Navy, a volunteer emergency response organization that mobilizes across the Gulf when someone goes into the water. Weather cut the first day of searching short. The effort resumed the next morning with a helicopter added. The Sheriff's Department put out a public appeal describing what he was wearing, blue swim trunks and sunglasses, and asking anyone who had spoken with him on Saturday to come forward. Josh Gill, an incident commander with the United Cajun Navy, described the situation publicly in the terms responders had been given. He said Nolan had gone out to Horn Island with some buddies on a boat and was last seen talking to a girl on the north end. Christine Wansley spent that stretch on social media, posting appeal after appeal. On the morning of July 5th, she posted that she and her husband had possession of their son's cell phone and that they had gone out to the island themselves to search for him. Read that again. The parents of a missing teenager got in a boat and went to the island. Then on the morning of July 6th, at around 8:45, a park ranger found a body in the water off the northwestern tip. Understand what those 40 hours did to this case. Everything that has been argued about since the timeline, the account, the phone, the condition of the remains was shaped by them. Every hour Nolan was in the water is an hour of evidence degrading. Every hour before the first interview is an hour of memory settling into a version. By the time anyone knew there was a case to investigate, the two things an investigation most needs, a scene and a body examined quickly, had both already been compromised by the Gulf itself. That is not anyone's misconduct. It is geography and time. But it is the reason a phone became so important. The boat left Horn Island. Nolan's phone left with it. That single fact, that a device belonging to a missing 18-year-old crossed 10 miles of open water back to the mainland while its owner did not, is the origin point of everything that has happened since. Nolan's mother, Christine Wansley, reported him missing late on the night of July 4th. She and her husband, Elmore Wansley, described meeting an officer that night in a McDonald's parking lot to hand over information about their son. Christine has described her reaction to that meeting simply. She asked where the urgency was, but before any of that, they were doing what any parent would do. They were trying to find the phone. Christine tracked it using Life 360, a GPS-based family safety application. According to attorney Ben Crump, speaking publicly in the days that followed, the phone was located at the home of one of the young men who owned the boat. The retrieval itself was described to CNN by Tashima Hans, the mother of one of Nolan's friends. She said she tracked the device through Snapchat to a house where a lot of people were gathered. She went there to get it back for the Wansleys. She has said it took about 15 minutes for someone to locate the phone and hand it to her. Elmore Wansley has described the process of recovering both his son's phone and his keys as chaotic, and said it took a while. 15 minutes in a house full of people for a phone. The family has never claimed that delay proves anything on its own, but it is where their questions began. Because when Christine Wansley finally had her son's phone in her hands and she opened it, what she found, or rather, what she says she did not find, became the single most contested claim in this entire case. On July 10th, Christine Wansley sat for an interview with Good Morning America. She described going through her son's phone with her sister. She said Nolan had 2 Snapchat accounts. She said they went into both of them. Her word for what she found was clean. Too clean. She said there was nothing there from July 4th. No photographs, no videos, nothing saved on the account from the day he was on the island. And she framed it against something only a parent would notice. She said she knew her child. She said if he had a phone out constantly at home, then on a holiday on a boat with all of his friends on a barrier island in the middle of the Gulf, there should have been something. Snapchat content by the platform's own design remains available for 24 hours. Christine has pointed out that it had not even been 24 hours. The parents also told Good Morning America that when they compared Nolan's location history between Life 360 and Snapchat, the data did not match. And here is a fact that has gone under-discussed, though it may be the most important detail in this section. It is unclear, publicly on the record, who had possession of Nolan's phone between July 4th and July 10th. Now, an essential distinction, and this program is going to draw it clearly rather than let it blur. Nothing about that has been established as deletion, not by investigators, not by any forensic examiner, not by any court. A phone can be empty for reasons that have nothing to do with anyone touching it. Snapchat content expires. Apps fail. Batteries die. A device with almost no signal on an island with almost no coverage may simply not have captured or uploaded what a parent would expect it to capture. What Christine Wansley described is a mother's observation. It is sincere, it is on the record, and it is the reason this phone matters. It is not a finding. The only thing that could turn an observation into a finding is a forensic examination of the device itself. Which brings us to the reason you're watching. There's a reason the family's attention narrowed onto that device rather than onto witness accounts. Because the visual record from Horn Island that day, and there is a great deal of it, has been almost impossible to authenticate. Hundreds of people were on that island. Nearly all of them had phones. Photographs and video from July 4th began circulating within days, and they have not stopped circulating since. At a press conference, Ben Crump referenced a video spreading on social media that he described as showing an alleged argument on the island, footage in which he said Nolan could be heard demanding his phone back. That clip has been discussed nationally, and it has never been authenticated by any investigating agency. No official has confirmed what it shows, when it was recorded, who is in it, or whether the voice is Nolan's. Crump raised it as something the family wanted examined. That is the entirety of its verified status. Later, another piece of footage surfaced. Video recorded on Horn Island on July 4th showing a boat named Mac Daddy, a vessel that closely resembles the one Nolan traveled on. In it, a young man in swim trunks matching those Nolan was photographed wearing that day can be seen aboard with friends. It may represent one of the last public sightings of him. May. That word is doing enormous work, and it should. This is the problem with crowdsourced evidence from a mass gathering. 100 cameras produce 100 fragments, and fragments without metadata are almost useless for building a timeline. You cannot tell from a clip alone what time it was taken, what order the clips belong in, or whether the person in frame is who everyone insists it is. Metadata solves that. Metadata is what turns a photograph into a timestamp. And metadata lives inside devices, which is precisely why the forensic examination question stopped being a technicality and became the whole case. Investigators have been asking the public for exactly this material. They have sought photographs, videos, and witness testimony from people who were on Horn Island that day. Roughly 60 witnesses have been interviewed, and still, an independent analytical review of the available photographs, videos, GPS coordinates, and witness accounts, completed and reported in late July, reached a conclusion that ought to stop anyone claiming certainty about this case in either direction. The available evidence still leaves a material gap, in the hours that matter most. After all of it, the interviews, the GPS records, the crowdsourced footage, the federal assistance with digital evidence. That is the void this case has been shouting into since the beginning. And the two things most likely to fill it are the two things nobody has been allowed to open. Before the phone dispute became public, the Wansley family's legal team was already moving on a second front, and this piece has been almost entirely overlooked in the coverage. Court records show that Christine Wansley's legal team filed petitions in Mississippi State Chancery Court, issuing subpoenas to a list of major technology companies: Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, all three owned by Meta, Snapchat, TikTok, and Life 360, the location tracking application she used to find the phone in the first place. According to the filings obtained by ABC News, the subpoenas seek the messages, photographs, and videos sent and received through Nolan's accounts. They seek his GPS location data, and they seek timestamps. Each company was given 21 days from receipt of the subpoena to produce and permit inspection of the requested material. Understand what that means strategically. The family was not waiting for the phone, because the phone is only one copy of the story. The other copy lives on servers in California, in data centers, in the backup infrastructure of companies that retain far more than most users assume. Content that vanishes from a handset does not necessarily vanish from a platform. If material was on Nolan's accounts on July 4th, the companies may still be able to say so, regardless of what the device itself now shows. Those 21-day windows have been running since late July, which means as this program is being produced, some of them have already closed. On July 15th, the two sides sat down. Nolan's family, their legal team, and the Jackson County District Attorney's Office met to discuss the investigation. Following that meeting, Ben Crump said publicly that the district attorney had committed to presenting the case to a grand jury once the investigation was complete. But the meeting produced something else, something specific, something that has now become the central dispute in this case. According to correspondence later sent by the family's legal team, the parties agreed on July 15th to a jointly coordinated forensic examination of Nolan's cell phone. The terms, as the family side described them, were detailed. The examination would take place at the Digital Forensics Lab at Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College. The district attorney's office would be there. The family's own forensic team would be there. And there was the possibility of FBI involvement. That last part is not far-fetched. Sheriff Ledbetter confirmed to WLOX on the afternoon of July 15th, the same day that the FBI was already assisting his office with examining digital evidence collected in the case. So the plan, as the family understood it, was straightforward. One device, one download, one examination, everyone in the room at the same time. Attorney Liza A. Park of Ben Crump Law would later explain the logic in public, and the logic is worth sitting with because it explains why the family has been immovable on this point. The reasoning is this: it's done one time, one examination. A forensic download of a cell phone is not like a blood sample. You do not get a second, cleaner attempt if something goes wrong. If the device is handled improperly, if data is altered, if the chain of custody is broken, that damage cannot be reversed. There is no backup Nolan. So the family wanted everyone present. They wanted a protocol. They wanted a documented chain of custody. And they wanted an agreement about what would happen to the data afterward. That was July 15th. Then came the part nobody planned for. Nothing happened. According to correspondence from the family's legal team, no date was ever set. No time, no place. July turned into August. The state autopsy was completed. The independent autopsy results were released and debated across the country. Protests were held. Rewards were pledged. Threats were made. Federal lawmakers got involved. And the phone sat there, unexamined by anyone. Then on August 12th at 51 minutes past 12 in the afternoon Eastern Time, the district attorney's office sent the family a letter. The letter directed them to deliver Nolan's phone to her office by 9 o'clock in the morning on August 14th. That is under 48 hours. And here is the detail that turned a scheduling dispute into a national story. When that letter was sent, Nolan's parents were not in Mississippi. They were out of state. They were not scheduled to return before the deadline expired. The next day, August 13th, Liza Park stood in front of the press at the National Association of Black Journalists Convention in Atlanta alongside Ben Crump, Reverend Al Sharpton, Congresswoman Lucy McBath, and Nolan's parents. She clarified on the record what the agreement had been. The Jackson County District Attorney's Office, the family's forensic team, and possibly the FBI would download and examine the phone. And then she said the family was still waiting for the district attorney to determine the time, the place, the date. Her words were direct. Let us know, and we'll be there with our forensics team and anybody else. We're ready for it to happen. That same period, the family's legal team put their position in writing to District Attorney Angel Myers McElrath. They confirmed that Elmore and Christine Wansley remained willing to facilitate a forensic examination, consistent with what the parties had agreed to on July 15th. They stated that in order to preserve the evidence, they had asked for a protocol, a chain of custody, and an agreement on what happens to the data, and that they had not received those details. And they characterized the deadline itself. Setting a 48-hour deadline while the family was out of state, they said, was not a good faith path to answers, and it weakened their confidence in the process. They added something else. that Nolan's parents would not be pulled into a fight over deadlines and logistics. Now, this program is going to be precise here because a great deal of content about this case has not been. Nothing in that correspondence says prosecutors refuse to examine Nolan's phone. Nothing in it says the district attorney's office is hiding anything. The verified, documented dispute is about the conditions, who is in the room, who holds the device, what protocol governs the download, what happens to the data afterward. That is a real dispute with real forensic consequences. It is not a conspiracy, but it is also not the only version of these events in public. Several of Nolan's friends have retained counsel. Among them is attorney J. Tyler Cox, working alongside defamation attorney Edward Andrew Paltzik. Their position has been unambiguous. In a joint statement, they said they were proud to stand with and fight for what they described as 3 completely innocent young men. And on the question of the phone, Cox has offered an account that directly contradicts the family's. He has said publicly that he does not think the family has turned in Nolan's phone. He said he was willing to bet his reputation on it. He said he doesn't think they've cooperated at all. The family's legal team has refuted that characterization in writing, pointing to the correspondence itself as proof. The July 15th agreement, their repeated statements of willingness, their requests for a protocol that went unanswered. So you now have 2 accounts of the same 6 weeks. In one, a family has been ready since mid-July and cannot get a date on the calendar. In the other, a family has been sitting on a critical piece of evidence and would not hand it over. Both are being asserted by licensed attorneys. Both are on the record. Neither has been resolved by a court. And this is where the case gets genuinely difficult, because the honest answer is that the public does not currently have the information needed to adjudicate between them. What the public has is 2 letters, 2 press statements, and a phone that still has not been opened. Attorneys for the young men have also said they intend to hold accountable anyone they believe has spread falsehoods about their clients. They have visited Horn Island themselves, they've said, to understand the island's layout. That is not a small thing to note, because it tells you that this case is now being litigated in at least 3 directions at once: the criminal investigation, the potential civil claims, and the defamation front. And every one of those threads runs back through the same lock device. So let's talk about what a forensic examination could actually determine, and just as importantly, what it could not. A modern smartphone is not a diary. It is a sensor package that never stops writing. A full forensic extraction can recover message content and the timestamps attached to it, photographs and videos, along with the embedded metadata that records when a file was created, sometimes where, and on what device. Application activity logs, location history from multiple independent sources, the operating system's own records, individual apps, and network data. It can often identify when a device was unlocked and by whom, if biometric or passcode records are preserved. In many cases, it can recover material that a user believed was gone. Deleted does not always mean erased. On many systems, deletion simply marks the space as available. Until something overwrites it, fragments remain. Critically, forensic tools can sometimes reconstruct the deletion event itself, not just what was removed, but that a removal occurred and roughly when. That is why this device matters. That is why the family wanted the FBI in the room. That is why the terms of the examination have been fought over for a month. And now the discipline. None of that has happened yet. No forensic examiner has publicly reported findings from Nolan Wells' phone. No investigator has publicly stated that the device contains evidence of a crime. No official has stated that material was deleted, or by whom, or when. We cannot tell you the phone proves foul play. We cannot tell you it clears anyone. We cannot tell you it identifies a single human being. We can tell you this, and it is remarkable on its own terms. 6 weeks after an 18-year-old died under circumstances no one has publicly explained, the most information-dense object recovered from that day has not been examined by the family's experts, by the district attorney's experts, or by the FBI. Nobody knows what's on it. That is not a theory. That is the state of the record. And it is only half of what this program came to show you, because the phone is not the only piece of evidence in this case sitting behind a locked door. Nolan's body was recovered on the morning of July 6th. A United States park ranger found him at around 8:45 in the morning in the water just off the northwestern tip of Horn Island. Jackson County Coroner Bruce Lind confirmed his identity through dental records. Todd Terrell, president of the volunteer search organization the United Cajun Navy, said Nolan was found face down. He initially described him as fully clothed, then later clarified that he was wearing only his swim trunks. The area is known for strong currents. Sheriff Ledbetter said early on that there were no signs of foul play and that drowning was suspected. He also said at that stage that there was no indication of drug or alcohol use and that the coroner would have more after the autopsy and toxicology. The state medical examiner performed an autopsy the following day on July 7th, and that is where the family's confidence in the process began to erode. On July 10th, Christine Wansley said publicly that the sheriff's early statements had made her uncomfortable and called for transparency. So the Wansleys did what families do when they no longer trust the answer they've been given. They sent their son's body to Washington, D.C., and paid for a second examination themselves. The pathologist was Dr. Roger A. Mitchell, Jr. His preliminary findings were released on July 22nd at the NAACP National Convention in Chicago. And the result was not what either side of the internet wanted it to be. Cause of death: undetermined, pending further investigation. Manner of death: undetermined, pending further investigation. Now, this program is going to be extremely careful here because more misinformation has been generated by this single word than by anything else in the case. Undetermined does not mean homicide. Undetermined does not mean drowning. Undetermined does not mean the pathologist found something and couldn't say it. Undetermined is a forensic term with a specific meaning. It means the examination did not produce sufficient information to reach a conclusion about how this person died. That is the finding. It is a statement about the limits of what could be known from that examination, not a verdict and not a hint at one. The report identified plainly why those limits existed, and the limitations are the most important part of the document. First, this was the second autopsy, not the first. During the state's examination on July 7th, organs and tissue were retained, including the lungs and portions of the neck and throat. That single fact removed the most direct route to an answer. Ben Crump has explained the consequence publicly. Because the state's examination had removed and dissected each organ, Mitchell was unable to directly observe Nolan's lungs for water intake. He could not see what was in his stomach. Water in the lungs is one of the ways a pathologist assesses drowning. Mitchell did not have the lungs. Second, toxicology results were not available to him. Third, decomposition. Nolan had been in the water. By the time Mitchell received him, the condition of the remains made it impossible to determine whether there had been bruising, abrasions, or other surface injuries. Now here is the correction this program considers most necessary, and it runs against a large volume of content that has circulated for weeks. The retention of organs and tissue during a first autopsy is routine. It is standard pathology practice. Pathologists retain material for further testing precisely because additional analysis may be needed later. It is not evidence of concealment. It is not unusual. It is what is supposed to happen. A doctor speaking to ABC News made the same point. It is not uncommon for a pathologist to remove an organ or tissue to examine deeper inside the body. And this is exactly what can make a second autopsy harder to conduct than the first. That does not make the family's frustration unreasonable. It is entirely possible for a procedure to be both completely standard and completely devastating to a family seeking an independent answer. Those two things are not in conflict. But if you have seen this framed as proof that Mississippi hid something inside Nolan Wells' body, that framing does not survive contact with how forensic pathology actually works. What Mitchell could determine was narrow, and he said so. There were no skull fractures, no other major fractures, no deep tissue injuries that clearly explained the death. He could not determine whether Nolan was conscious when he entered the water. He could not determine how he entered the water at all. According to Crump, Mitchell also could not rule out foul play. And there was one more observation. The independent examination documented an area of red discoloration in the soft tissue at the back of Nolan Wells' head. Deep red tissue beneath the skin. That finding has been repeated across the internet thousands of times, and it has been mangled almost every time. So here's exactly what it is and exactly what it isn't. It is not a fracture. Mitchell found no skull fractures. It is not a documented blow. The report does not state that Nolan was struck. It is not a cause of death. The cause of death was undetermined. What Mitchell wrote was that the discoloration was inconclusive and that it deserved further investigation. Inconclusive. That is the word from the report. Can soft tissue discoloration at the back of the head result from an impact? Yes. It can also result from other processes, including changes that occur in a body after death and during immersion. That ambiguity is precisely why the examiner used the word he used. Former medical examiner Dr. Michelle Dupre, discussing the case publicly, described the results as equivocal, noting the discoloration, the absence of fractures or deep tissue injuries, and the decomposed condition of the body. Her caution was direct. Until an investigation is done, we simply don't know. And what you want to avoid, she said, is tunnel vision. That is the whole of it, a finding that raises a question and does not answer it. But Mitchell did not simply note it and stop. He indicated he needed more additional investigation and access to material from the original examination. And the family's team acted on that. Attorney Ahmad Smith sent a letter to prosecutors asking them to help Mitchell obtain access to materials from the first autopsy, which means the independent pathologist's own position, as of this recording, is that his report is not finished. It is preliminary. It is waiting on something. And the thing it is waiting on is held by the state of Mississippi. Here is where this case becomes genuinely extraordinary. Because everything you have just heard, the undetermined finding, the missing lungs, the discoloration, the debate, the protests, the 6 weeks of national argument, all of it concerns the second autopsy. The one performed with incomplete material on a decomposed body, without toxicology. The first autopsy, the state examination, performed on July 7th with the complete body before decomposition advanced, with every organ available, with toxicology, that report exists. Officials confirmed to NBC News at the end of July that Mississippi's medical examiner had completed it. It is finished. It has been finished for weeks, and no one outside the investigation has read it. On July 23rd, the Office of Jackson County District Attorney Angel Myers McElrath confirmed that the autopsy report would be withheld until a grand jury reviews the evidence. In a recorded public statement, McElrath said the decision follows standard practice in Jackson County. The district attorney's office has also said something that has been widely ignored, and that this program is going to state clearly. Convening a grand jury does not mean anyone believes a crime occurred. The office has stated it is standard procedure for most unnatural or suspicious deaths in the county. It is what happens when someone dies in a way that isn't obviously explained. It is not an accusation. It is not a signal. It is a process. If you've seen the phrase, it's going to a grand jury, presented as though prosecutors have concluded Nolan Wells was killed, that is not what it means, and the office that convenes it has said so on the record. But hold the two halves of this together, because the shape of it is unusual. The complete forensic picture of how Nolan Wells died may already exist. It may already sit in a file in Mississippi. Investigators may already know. The family does not know. The friends do not know. The public does not know, and the pathologist the family hired is still asking for access to the material that produced it. There's a version of this story where that document says accidental drowning, and a grieving family finally has an answer they can hold. There is a version where it says something else entirely. Neither version can be reported because neither version is public, and this program is not going to pretend otherwise. You'll never hear the words Nolan Wells' official autopsy revealed in this video, because as of this recording, nothing has been revealed. That uncertainty is the story. It doesn't need to be improved. It's worth explaining what a grand jury actually is, because the phrase has been used loosely by nearly everyone covering the story, and the misunderstanding is doing real damage. A grand jury is not a trial. There is no defendant. There is no defense attorney. Nobody is found guilty or innocent. No verdict is returned. A grand jury is a group of citizens who sit privately, hear evidence presented by a prosecutor, and decide one narrow question: whether there is enough to formally charge someone with a crime. And the proceedings are secret by design. That secrecy is not a Mississippi peculiarity, and it is not something the district attorney invented for this case. It exists in jurisdictions across the country, and it exists for reasons that cut in more than one direction. It protects the reputations of people who are examined and never charged. It protects witnesses who might otherwise face pressure, a concern that in this specific case has already produced federal charges against 3 separate people. And it prevents the evidence pool from being contaminated before it can be evaluated, which matters enormously when a case is being discussed by millions of strangers in real time. That is the principle. Here is the cost. The same secrecy that protects a witness also keeps a grieving family in the dark. The same rule that stops evidence from being poisoned also guarantees that for weeks or months, the only voices the public hears are the ones outside the room. Attorneys, commentators, activists, strangers on the internet. Prosecutors get silence. Everyone else gets a microphone. And a family that has spent 6 weeks being told to wait without being told what they're waiting for is not being unreasonable when their confidence in the process erodes. Those 2 things can both be true. A rule can be legitimate and still be experienced as a wall. There's one more piece of arithmetic here that this case has demonstrated with unusual clarity. Sealing a document does not stop the public from forming a conclusion. It only removes the accurate information from the competition. The question was never whether people would decide what happened to Nolan Wells. They were always going to decide. The only question was what they would decide it from. But of course, an information vacuum does not stay empty. Over the past several weeks, a purported toxicology report circulated online, claiming to contain Nolan Wells results. State officials warned the public that fabricated documents were circulating and urged people to rely only on verified information from investigators. Think about the mechanics of that for a moment. The real document is sealed. Millions of people want to know what's in it. And into that gap walks a forgery with numbers, with letterhead, with the visual grammar of authority. And it spreads faster than any official statement because it gives people the one thing the truth is currently refusing to provide: an answer. So a rule for this program and for anyone covering this case honestly: no toxicology figures circulating on social media should be treated as real unless it can be traced to an authenticated official source. As of this recording, no official toxicology result in this case has been publicly released. There is one related document that is real, and it needs to be handled with precision because it has been misrepresented in both directions. On July 5th, while Nolan was still missing, while the search was still active, the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources Marine Patrol sent an email to the United States Coast Guard. It carried his physical description and last known location, the standard information for a search. It also contained a line listing alcohol intake as heavy. That document is authentic. It was obtained by Fox News Digital. And here is what must be said in the same breath every time. The email does not identify the source of that information. It does not say who provided it or how they knew. It was written during an active search when responders were assembling whatever details they could from whoever was available, which is exactly the situation in which unverified information enters a record. It is not a toxicology result. It is not a laboratory finding. It is not a medical determination of anything. And it sits alongside Sheriff Ledbetter's own early statement that there was no indication of drug or alcohol use. 2 entries, same week, same case, pointing in different directions. The only thing that resolves that contradiction is the actual toxicology report, which is sealed. It would be dishonest to describe this case without describing what has grown around it, because the vacuum is not only filled with fake documents, it has filled with something worse. 3 people have now been criminally charged in connection with threats tied to this investigation. Joseph Alfredo Vasquez Dumars, a California man, was charged on July 14th. Grand jury charging documents identify the victim in that case by initials matching a Jackson County judge, Ashley Cole, the mother of one of Nolan's friends, who had posted publicly that her son was cooperating with authorities. She has since shared screenshots of the threatening messages she received. Michelle Francine Edwards, an Ohio woman, was charged over bomb threats to the George County Chancery Clerk's Office and the Jackson County Sheriff's Office on July 23rd. According to an affidavit, she called the clerk's office 21 times. One of the things she said was that the clock is ticking, and Edward James Porter was charged over threats made on July 31st to 2 witnesses. According to a probable cause affidavit, he made multiple calls threatening to kill them and their families. The people he threatened, according to family attorney Russell Latino, were members of Bart Edmiston Jr.'s family, including a witness in the investigation into Nolan's death. None of these 3 appeared to know Nolan Wells. None of them appeared to know his family or the boating group or anyone connected to the investigation. They were strangers. They were following the case online, and they picked up a phone. Warren Hudson's family has said they received thousands of death threats. His father, Dr. Benjamin Hudson, provided audio of some of them to the Sun-Herald. And then Dr. Hudson did something that complicates every easy narrative about this case. He offered $50,000 of his own money as a reward for information, on behalf of himself and his son, telling the Sun-Herald he wanted justice for the Wells family. That $50,000 joined a reward pool that had already been building. Reverend Al Sharpton pledged $50,000, announced at Nolan's funeral in Ocean Springs. Another $50,000 was pledged alongside it. NFL wide receiver Terrell Owens added $25,000. The total reached roughly $175,000. Meanwhile, an anonymous professional misconduct complaint was filed against Christine Wansley with the Mississippi Board of Nursing. She works at a local health system. The board closed it. Ben Crump called the complaint frivolous and unfounded, an attempt, he said, to distract a grieving mother and intimidate her into silence, filed by someone who would not put their name on it. That effort, he said, failed. This is the environment in which 2 pieces of evidence remain sealed. Every day, they stay sealed. The space around them fills with something else. So bring it together. A phone that traveled 10 miles of open water without its owner. Agreed on July 15th to be examined jointly at a named forensics lab, with the possibility of federal involvement. Still unexamined a month later. Now the subject of an unresolved public dispute between the family's counsel and the district attorney's office. A dispute about custody, protocol, and a 48-hour deadline delivered while the parents were out of state. An official autopsy completed weeks ago, performed with the full body and complete toxicology, sealed until a grand jury reviews it. And in between, an independent examination that could not reach a conclusion because it came second, because the material it needed had been retained, and because time and water had done what time and water do. 3 sources of truth, all of them obstructed in 3 completely different ways. Attorney Eric Hurt, speaking to NPR, said he believes the case could go before a grand jury in just under 30 days, based on the timeline of evidence he has seen. He did not indicate who, if anyone, would be the subject of that review. At the federal level, the Congressional Black Caucus sent a letter, signed by Chair Yvette D. Clarke, urging Attorney General Todd Blanche and FBI Director Kash Patel to launch an independent review of the case. Congresswoman Lucy McBath said they had given the federal government 7 days to respond. That clock is running now. Sheriff Ledbetter, for his part, has maintained throughout that his office is doing the work. His detectives interviewed people with first-hand interactions with Nolan on the day he disappeared. Roughly 60 witnesses have been interviewed. The 3 friends who traveled on the boat were interviewed in depth. The FBI has been assisting with digital evidence since at least mid-July. He told ABC News that Nolan Wells' family deserves a thorough and factual investigation, and that's exactly what they're going to get. So here is the question this program will leave with you, and it is not an accusation of anyone. Is it possible that the answer to what happened to Nolan Wells already exists? That it is written down in a completed autopsy report in a county office in Mississippi, and that the only thing standing between the public and that answer is a procedural sequence that has not yet run its course? Is it possible that a second answer is sitting inside a phone that nobody has opened? We don't know. That's the honest position, and it's the only defensible one. What we can say is that 6 weeks after an 18-year-old went to an island with his friends and did not come home, the 2 objects most likely to explain his final hours have been examined by no one. Nolan Xavier Wells was born on August 19, 2007, to Elmer Wansley Sr. and Christine Wells Wansley. He would have turned 19 this week. His family has called for a national day of prayer to mark it. Ben Crump, speaking to reporters, said Christine described the loss getting harder as the birthday approached. She has spoken publicly about grief arriving in floods at different times without warning. She lost her own mother recently, and she has said that this loss is different. Insurmountable was her word. His high school football coach, Jake Bramlett, described him as the kind of son, teammate, friend, and student every coach hopes to have, and said he was so much more than an outstanding football player. In New Orleans, hundreds of miles from Mississippi, a second-line procession moved through the streets in his honor. One of the organizers, Reuben Evans, said the point was both to celebrate Nolan's life and to remind his family they were not alone. "We're not afraid to question," he said. "We want answers. We just want the Wells family to know we are behind them." Elmore Wansley has returned again and again to the same two things that never made sense to him. That he was told his son stayed behind on the island to talk to a girl. And that, he says, was not in his son's character. And that he was told his son didn't have his phone. He raised his children on one rule for a group. If you go with 5, you come back with 5. Ben Crump has reduced the whole of it to a single sentence. Somebody knows something. Somebody saw something. Everything else in this case, the letters, the deadlines, the sealed reports, the arguments between lawyers, the rewards, the threats, the forgeries, orbits that one unanswered question. What happened to Nolan Wells on Horn Island? And which piece of evidence will finally provide the answer? The phone or the autopsy? A word about how this program was made and how it should be understood. The investigation into Nolan Wells' death remains ongoing. As of this recording, no one has been charged in connection with his death, and no official determination of cause or manner of death has been made public. Every claim in this program has been attributed to a named source, a court filing, a public statement, an official's own words, or established reporting. Where accounts conflict, both have been presented. Nothing in this program should be treated as evidence against any individual. The young men who traveled to Horn Island that day have not been named as suspects by any law enforcement agency, and several have retained counsel who state they are innocent. Speculation is not proof, and unanswered questions are not accusations. This case is moving quickly. The forensic examination of Nolan's phone, the grand jury review, the response to the federal request, and the eventual release of the state autopsy could each materially change what is publicly known. If that happens, what you've heard here should be measured against it. And the last thing worth saying is the simplest. Behind every filing and every deadline in this story is a mother who tracked her son's phone across 10 miles of water, and a father who taught his children to leave with the same number they arrived with. They are still waiting. If you want to follow this case as it develops, as the phone is finally examined, as the grand jury convenes, as the sealed report eventually surfaces, please subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. When there are real answers, they'll be covered here, carefully, and without invention. Thank you for watching.